One artist, 2,000 minutes, and a Letterboxd most watched actor that I promise I can explain. Today on the show, we are recapping the year that was with my Spotify and Letterboxd Wrapped reveals. But we aren't just looking into data. I'm also going to be sitting down to review the highly anticipated and highly debated new special from Tom Segura, Teacher. But to get through all of it, I'm going to be breaking down the show into 3 distinct chapters. The first chapter, which I call Rhythm, is going to be diving into the music and podcasts that I consumed on Spotify this year. And then next, we're going to move into my unfiltered review of Tom Segura's new special, Teacher, and that will make up the roast section. And then finally, we'll close out with the reels section, and I will give a deep dive into my Letterboxd stats and to see if my movie taste is really as dark as it seems. I've got the receipts and the ratings. Let's ride. In 2025, my Spotify Wrapped really painted a broad picture of what my year was. I love when these come out every year. I get anticipated. I love seeing, them posted to people's stories because, I'm a little nosy sometimes. I feel like we all are. It is, really cool to see what people actually really listen to and spend their time with because, they can kind of say like they listen to, so-and-so or so-and-so, but you don't really know until you actually kind of see the stats for yourself. Music-wise, I had 5 albums in heavy rotation this year. The first one was The Pale Tourist by Jim Gaffigan, which kind of surprised me that was in there because I only listened to it once, but maybe it was just because I didn't really listen to any other complete albums or not very much. And then over to Morgan Wallen's I'm the Problem, which I did give a whole, listen through. Then there were certain tracks I listened off there quite a bit. Like Missing was my personal favorite off the new album, but actually, my top track overall for the year ended up being Green River by Creedence Clearwater Revival. That was kind of a new one to me. At the beginning of the year, I actually heard Bert Kreischer talking about that song before because I knew he was a CCR guy and a Florida man, so he, loves that kind of a southern rock style that they got going on. So, but the real MVP of my library was Morgan Wallen. Hopefully I didn't give it away with the shirt already when I started this video, but I spent 2,773 minutes listening to him this year, which puts me in the top 1% of his global audience, which I'm not surprised because this is, the 4th or 5th year in a row that he's been my number one. So I really don't know what it's going to take for another artist to knock him off. I didn't really feel like I listened to him as much as compared to, the last few years. But, all together with, the music and the podcast that I consume, because those were a lot too. It was 33 days spent of listening. So that's a lot. The podcast that I really loved delving into in that world was the Joe Rogan Experience was my number one. And then Two Bears, One Cave. I consider myself more of a bigger fan of Two Bears, One Cave because I've seen every episode and I watch, when they I shouldn't say watch, but listen to, every Monday when they drop. Probably Joe Rogan was just number one, maybe because of like the length of episodes and stuff, because there have definitely been a lot of Rogan episodes that I did not check out. So that could probably be why that was. And that clocked in over 14,000 minutes of just listening to podcasts. So I know I consume a lot of them, and maybe that's a reason why I'm doing one now. But speaking of podcasts, though, I spent, a lot of time with Tom Segura this year, and especially with him and Bert Kreischer riffing back and forth. And he just dropped a new special on Christmas Eve called Teacher. It is available now on Netflix. I definitely recommend you guys check it out. Since I spent so much time listening to him this year, I was really curious to see what he had in store and how it would compare to, when I saw him live doing this material and, his previous specials. So let's get into the review. Did Tom Segura deliver a masterclass, or does he need to stay after class for this one? Let's find out. Okay, so now I feel like I'm a little bit more appropriately dressed. Had to put on my Tom Segura shirt to rep him while I talk about his new special, Teacher, which is available on Netflix. And if you're a fan of Tom, if you're a fan of stand-up comedy, I suggest you check it out and see for yourself. But I will give you some of my thoughts, and I will try to be as spoiler-free as possible to give you a chance to see what you think. But the masterclass is what I say what he got right with the special. And probably my favorite joke from it, I will use for example, is what I call the fighter plane joke. So he speaks about an experience where he flew with the Blue Angels last year, really cool thing. And he was just taken aback by how good looking his pilot was. And he's like, man, he was made in the lab, essentially, like what he said. And he's like, I think about him every night. Just a beautiful man. I'm kind of paraphrasing here. But what I thought was so funny is just how Tom could take, kind of an absurd topic, but make it so funny. And essentially, in like the fighter plane joke, or as I call it, I don't really know what he says, if he's like Blue Angel or Blue Angels, or if it's just called like Seven, because that's what he referred to the guy as if you were, making a bunch of stuff on like an assembly line, or, by a computer or something. I'm sure that's why he does that. But anyway, I actually saw this joke live when I saw him towards the end of his Come Together tour. And yeah, that was the one that stood out to me the most because, like I said, it's something for him to take kind of an absurd, topic. It's not that absurd, I guess. Tom has an incredible storytelling style where he can take a completely absurd premise and just live in it. And without giving too much away, essentially what the main part of it is that I found funny from that bit was it's interesting that it's like in other countries, how like how do I say this? The US is so different from other countries to where like the US, we have, fighter planes go overhead for like the national anthem for a football game, or it's race day, But any other country in the world, they're like, oh crap. Cause that's like the last thing you see, So it's just like it was so funny that especially like the sound effect he did after it, and he was like, it was just so funny. And then he just moves on to the next topic like nothing happened. And I love just that dark style that he has, that kind of a delivery that Tom Segura does. It's just classic. You know, it really captures the specific kind of high stakes intensity that only he can pull off. If you're a fan of his podcast riffing on Two Bears, One Cave, you know, this is the kind of material you're looking for. It's easily the standout moment of Teacher, I thought. There were a couple of other bits into where like the teacher name actually comes into play was really good. I would say that, it's 4 out of 5 for me. I thought it was going to be about a 3.5, but as it went along, it kind of picked up steam a little bit more. But, even if the whole set wasn't quite as relentless as Sledgehammer, I thought, that one bit alone makes, the special definitely worth your watch. I feel like it's kind of, I don't know. I shouldn't say that, Tom Segura's in, quite a rut or whatever, but a lot of it's kind of just like, I don't know, so baseline kind of jokes. And I feel like he's kind of, I don't know, eased off the gas a little bit to where like Sledgehammer, it felt like he was still really pushing the envelope like he had in his couple of previous specials that he was like pushing. But I guess he's at a level now to where he, doesn't really have to. But with all that said, I'd say it's definitely worth a watch, and I give it a final grade of 4 out of 5 on my Letterboxd rating. But it's clear that I spent a lot of my time laughing at guys like Tom Segura and, many other great comedians. But my Letterboxd stats show that my taste actually leaned a lot darker than you'd think. You'd really be surprised when you look at the data that I got, because I was like, oh, man, while I love, a good comedy, my year in review proves that I'm actually more of a horror fan at heart, which I did know. Those are, my two favorite topics, horror and comedy, especially when they blend them, are great. I'm starting to get a little bit more into action, but I logged a total of 736 hours of watch time this year. And most of my time was spent with the undead and monster classics. So that was kind of different. I don't know how that got categorized, but whatever. But anyway, here is the full breakdown of my 2025 movie marathon, and it was a lot, so stick around. So jumping into the reels portion of this episode, let's get into the raw data that really gives kind of a scale of my year and what it was like. So starting off with the big numbers to really set the stage, I watched a total of 506 movies, which adds up to a total of about 736 hours watched, or that would be a whole 30 days, a whole month of movies watched. So that's a lot of content, especially when I talked about, what I consumed on Spotify. So it's a lot, man. But a thing that I do want to mention is 457 of these films were first-time watches. And this just shows, that as I always say to people that know me, I really don't rewatch a lot of stuff because I'm just trying to get through so many of, like the classics or things people suggest. There's a lot of movies out there, more and more all the time. And as Jim Gaffigan says, like, you can watch all these things, but you won't even make a dent because in the grand scheme of things, there is just so much stuff out there, more and more made all the time. And I can't even keep up, but I'm going to try. Um, and then, as I mentioned earlier about the favorite actor, it really surprised me too that my favorite actor was Dave Chappelle. I don't really know how that happened. I think the only way I could see that happening was maybe because I listened to all of his stand-up specials for the first time, and most of those are, he's got a ton of stuff on Netflix, then he has some, stuff on HBO Max, and so I guess, and then they're available on Letterboxd to rank. So, and I guess too is that like with me watching so many different films, there wasn't kind of one actor or another that I watched probably as much content. So that must be why, because he was the single most, per person that I watched. You know, Even though I went through so many other people's specials, like Nikki Glazer, I listened to all of her specials, last year for the first time. So I don't know. I think they might be a little bit off on their data too, but it's hard to know. I'm just gonna roll with it. But then for like my habits, or extremes, this kind of really paints a story to who I am. The week of July 14th through July 14th through the 20th was my biggest as I for the amount of films I watched. I watched 17 films that week. And then the day of the week, which I thought was kind of cool that it kind of shows your averages in like a little like bar graph, is that Thursdays were on average the day of the week that I watched the most movies. I guess that makes sense because I'm off Thursdays. Just a good day to unwind. And then starting off 2025, literally on New Year's Day, I started it with the Aubrey Plaza movie, Life After Beth. That's been on my watch list for a while. It kind of intrigued me because it looked like kind of a fun horror comedy, and it's kind of okay. I gave it a 2.5 rating on Letterboxd. A thing that I learned this year was that not everything that people says that are good, are good movies are necessarily good movies. And what I mean by that is not everything is made for everyone. And there's a lot of movies that I like that people call absolute trash, but I guess just to each their own. And you have to see what you like, and not every movie is made for everyone. And I bookended it with a rewatch of Elf on December 29th. I can't count how many times I've watched that movie. I actually left off the last 45 minutes. I didn't get a chance to finish up watching it. I mean, it's left HBO Max now. I'm surprised I don't have that on DVD, but maybe I will someday. But and then kind of to give a little bit of a taste profile, or kind of shows my identity. My biggest genres were horror, as I said, and even Letterboxd broke this down into nano genres, which is like victim, bloody, terrifying, which I guess makes sense because I like gory stuff. I like a good slasher, and hence why I'm wearing the Friday the 13th shirt for this section. It just felt fitting. But and then there were also some big moments. I guess when you watch over 500 movies, I'll give you a couple little highlights. Was that my 100th watch of the year was the Monster Squad. I know a lot of people talk about that and highly recommend it and stuff. I thought it was decent. I thought it was a good time. Kind of reminded me of like a Goonies type thing, but with the Universal monsters. And I'm not a big Universal Monsters guy, but I had a decent enough time with it. And then for my 500th watch of the year, which was kind of no surprise, but it was Santa Claus the movie, which I already previously discussed in another episode of my Christmas movie rankings. That's up on this channel now, and you can check that out. So that is a wrap on my 2025 deep dive from 48,000 minutes of music to over 500 movies. It's been a massive year of content for me. Whether you loved or hated Tom Segura's Teacher, I want to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed the show, please hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Drop a comment below and let me know what your number one artist or movie was from this year. I'll be checking out the comments, and I'm really curious to see what you guys think. And thank you for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one.